All right. So my name's Keanu Rish. I'm a realtor with Lundquist Real Estate and Appraisals, and this is Bob, the owner. Uh, John Lundquist is the managing broker. You want to take a second to introduce yourself?
Yes, I'm Bob Lundquist. I'm the owner of Lundquist Appraisals Real Estate here in Wabash, Indiana. I've been in business here in Wabash County for over 43 years in the real estate business and the appraisal business. So, I've been involved in every aspect of the Realtors Association from the local level to the state level, and still active, especially in the state level, in a couple committees. So, I've been around a long time, and I've seen a lot of change in this real estate market. Obviously, over the years, I've seen interest rates under 3, and I've seen them as high as 16 and a half or 17. So, I've seen a change in my time. So, that pretty much talks about me.
Yeah, and even touch on that. So here we're using Media Outfitters. They do a great job. They do all of our professional photos and our podcast, and we're surrounded by cameras and microphones. And this is the way how we kind of sell ourselves for listings and to buyers. And compared to what when you started out, what did you guys use for advertising when you guys first started?
Well, when I started in real estate business in 1980, there was no MLS system, and the advertising that we could was limited to just the local newspapers. That was it. There was no social media, no computers, no cell phones. There was no other way to market yourself. We'd go out and list a property. We'd hang brochures on the wall. If another realtor happened to see it or had a customer that was looking for a house like that and happened to drive by and see the sign, they would call and ask if they could show the property. And so here we are today with an MLS system. Our MLS system is comprised of 42 counties around the state, so it's a big deal. And so, we list a property today. It goes worldwide across thousands of sites within minutes.
Yeah, that's crazy compared to back in the day where the sign out in the yard really did a lot of the advertising for you, and the newspaper articles and word of mouth and your actual location of your building mattered a lot more than what it does today, where the internet does a lot of that advertising for us, and word of mouth is still probably top
Yeah,
of the line
and
when it comes to knowing and choosing a realtor. But as of advertising a property, would you say it's probably the internet is the best realm of advertising now?
yes, social media, videos like this, it's all about social media today and advertising and the MLS system. And but back in the day, customers were more apt to call you and say, "Hey, Bob, I'm moving back to Wabash and I need a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house in this price range. Can you help me find one?" And so they put a lot of extra work on us that now people do on their own.
Yeah, I notice when with like my buyers, what I always tell them, I'm working with one out of Logan Sport, and great guy, new to me, it was a referral from family. Uh, I always tell all my buyers, hey, when we're looking for a house, good deals sell fast. So you need to check the market every day, and I need to check the market every day. For one reason or another, an algorithm may show you a house, but it may not show me a house. Or for one reason or another, when it comes down to family, maybe I get busy that day and I can't check it. Maybe they get busy one day and they can't check it. So if we're both checking it, hopefully we can find that house in a timely manner and get an offer on it before it goes contingent, because good deals go fast. Um, so I got a list here talking about tips for sellers, because I know that's what we try and focus on, is helping home owners sell their properties. What are the just top 3 things you would do if you were going to sell your home?
Well, first impressions have always been important, and I think it's even more important today than it was back in the day. So I would say, walk through that house as if you're a buyer and say, what would be a deal killer for me? What could I do that doesn't cost a fortune to make this house more appealing to a buyer that walks in that front door? That would be number one. Uh, Declutter the house. If you know you're going to move, if there's things that you can put in totes and store away that you're not going to need in the next 6 months, go ahead and do that. Make that house look as big and as presentable and as nice as possible. It's going to bring more money and it's going to sell quicker.
Okay. Okay. when you're at a property and you're writing that, so when you're at the property and you're walking through the home, we're obviously thinking about who is this home going to fit. So if you're inside the city, maybe a 2-bedroom, 1-bath, or a 2-bedroom, 2-bath home is going to be more. That's one story would be more ideal for a older couple or a younger couple who doesn't have children yet, and maybe a larger home, 3, 4, 5-bedroom home, which the 5 bedrooms don't hardly exist, would be more ideal for a larger family. When you're writing that listing description, I'm assuming you're writing it tailored to who you think that home would fit best.
For the most part, but people change too. So I get people all the time say, I absolutely have to have a house in the country. It's got to be at least 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, and it's got to be in a certain price range. And over time, they can't find what they're looking for, and they end up buying a house in town.
Really?
So, it's one of those things you'd have to, I usually set wide parameters and let them make the decision, because they may look at several homes and decide, what, I can get a lot more house for my money in town than I can out here in the country. I can't really find anything that suits me anyhow. And so they end up buying a house in town.
Yeah.
So I set those parameters wide enough that I'm not going to miss anything and let them make the decision.
Yeah, that's the ultimate reason why Olivia and I ended up buying 99 LaSalle's, because we wanted to live in the country. But unfortunately, at the moment, we can't afford a $400,000 house because that's what a home would sell for if you want 5 acres out in the county with enough bedrooms for your kids.
Well, and you're a perfect example of what I was just talking about. You actually wanted to live in the country and have ground to hunt on.
Yeah.
So here we are, you're living in town.
Yeah. Mushroom hunt season's quickly approaching. So moving on from that, so I have a statistic here. It's from Zillow. It said that homes sell for 2.3% more in the spring than in other seasons. What are your thoughts? Do you think that's accurate?
Well, I'm not sure I think anything Zillow says is accurate, but I will say that for the most part, spring, when the grass gets green and the flowers are blooming and the trees are leafed out, everyone feels better, and they're thinking about maybe at that point in time looking for a home.
Yeah.
And years and years ago, schools used to be the deciding factor, but now that schools are not really a factor anymore, you can send your kids to any school in the county that has a place available. That's really a non-issue anymore. And most people that don't move their children from a different school. So that I really don't hear that anymore, but that used to be a big factor 30 years ago.
Yeah, growing up, I know several kids who are, they're adults now, but who went to Northfield and they lived in the Southwood district, or they lived inside Wabash, but they went to Southwood or Northfield. So yeah, that's not uncommon anymore at all. I know we're kind of moving quick, but so we're in, 19 Connor Street?
Yes, 19 Connor Street. It's the first home that was constructed in Legacy Heights subdivision, which was the former site of the Wabash County Hospital. And Parkview, when they purchased the Wabash County Hospital, they agreed to build a new hospital out near 24 on Wabash Street. And they paid to demolish this building, remediate the site for the most part. The city had some contribution there, but for the most part, Parkview did that, and then they donated the property to the city, who then in turn deeded it to the current developers, and they are developing this subdivision. Okay. And so this was the first one that was constructed. They purposely built the biggest model house that they could, which obviously is a higher price point.
Yeah. This one is 19 Connor is?
Yes,
It's the biggest one?
It's the biggest one probably that'll be in here.
Okay.
It's 2,043 square feet of living area plus a 2-car garage. And it's 4 bedrooms, 3.5 baths. It was constructed by Ideal Homes. And so you can pretty much see when they do the walkthrough, what's here. But it's a beautiful home. And
what's the price point on it again?
It's $335.
And what's the square footage?
2,043.
So it comes out to $163.97 per square foot.
Yes.
That's pretty good, honestly.
Well,
Especially when you're looking at some of the smaller homes selling.
yeah, and it's right there in the middle, you know. And I did a lot of research when we talked about listing this property. In every community around here where Ideal Homes have built similar homes, and they've all either sold or are priced at this same price point.
Yeah.
I find that for the most part, I think it's nearly impossible to build a house for less than $150 or $155 a square foot. And if you want to upgrade things, countertops, cabinets, I mean, all kinds of custom features, you can end up over $300 a square foot in a house.
Yeah, that 163, I'm actually shocked. That's a really good price per square foot. So before the podcast started, I was going through and doing some of the price per square foot on homes that I've sold that I'm aware of. So I sold my home over on Lindlawn, 625 Lindlawn Drive, for $171 per square foot.
Yeah. Now,
I mean,
and it's a 50-year-old home's been remodeled.
yeah. Now it's been remodeled from, top to bottom, new studs, new roof, new everything. But still, I lived in it for 4 years, and there was somebody living in it for 2 years before me.
Yeah.
And it sold for 171
Well, I think
per square foot.
I really think that what the audience needs to understand is that prices have escalated tremendously in the last 5 years around the country, not just in Wabash, Indiana. And the Indiana Association of Realtors does a fantastic job with data collection, data analyzing, and reporting from all the MLSs that are around the state. They all go feed into the Indiana Association of Realtors, and they've got a fantastic team that analyzes that data. And I get reports on nearly a weekly basis from them. I'm on a committee that deals with that at the Indiana Association of Realtors. So, but I can tell you that the latest statistics that I saw just a couple of weeks ago was that in the last 5 years, the average price of homes in Indiana, now this is the whole state of Indiana, have gone up 12% a year. That's a 60% increase in 5 years. That's a huge amount. And now, in the last 12 months, I think that it's been in that 5 or 6% range. Now, whether Wabash is in that 5% range or 4% range or 6%, I really don't know offhand. But you think about it, prices are still going up. Now, granted, they're not going up 12% a year like they were, but they're still going up. And so I think buyers that are thinking, I'm just going to wait till prices come down, are missing the boat. Because prices are not going to come down in small town USA. Yeah. And so the best you can hope for is to buy the house now. The interest rates are probably around 6.5% or 6.6%, and hope that they come down into the 5s. At a later time you refinance. But if you think you're going to hold off for 2 or 3 years and buy at a cheaper house, it's not going to happen.
Yeah. And that's why Olivia and I moved. We had zero intentions of it, but I saw the trend. I bought my house appraised for $142,000, and I sold it for $180,000, I believe. And we gave zero concessions. So that does not surprise me at all. And when buyers, because I feel like this happens a lot, right? You get a seller who this is their last hurrah with this property. They're never going to go back to it, and they want as much as possible out of it. And I don't blame anybody. They want to net as much money as possible. And then you have a buyer that's the beginning. That's the beginning of their time frame that they're going to have this property, and they don't want to overpay for it. But on one side, the seller, this is the last they'll ever have to do with it, and the buyer's going to have that property in its appreciation for the next 20, 30 years, however long they live there. And if you do the math, so let's say you're $6,000 apart on a $100,000 deal, it could very easily appreciate that in 1 year. And it's like, you're going to let the deal fall apart because of this. You're going to keep house shopping for another year and paying rent for another year and miss out on that appreciation. So that's what I always bring up, because it mind boggles me that people let real estate deals fall apart over $1,000 or $2,000 when you're going to see that in appreciation in not even a year.
I guess what I would say is that that's always been the case. I've been in this business a long time, and it's always been the case that sellers want to get as much money as humanly possible out of their house when they sell it, and buyers want to buy it at the lowest possible price. Yes. And so, when they come together at a price that they can both live with, that's the meeting of the minds, and that's the definition of market value. And so when you expose this property to the market, buyers are going to look at it, they're going to make a decision that they think is in their best interest. Sellers are going to do the same.
Yeah.
And so, it's always been that process.
I tell you what, I'm working with a realtor here in Wabash right now, and we had 4 counter offers to come to a deal. Why? It's because, from my experience, the local agents here in Wabash do a better job representing you than a non-local agent. They know the market, and this is their reputation, and they're willing to hang it all on that, because that's what sells when you're a realtor is your reputation in your community, going the extra mile, giving 110%, and giving good, sound advice. And it's one of the reasons why I rely on you so much, because you said you have, 43 years of experience?
Be 44 years at the end of the year.
44 years. See, look, I can't top that. But I partnered with it. I can't beat him, so I partnered, right?
Well, back when I started in this business, if somebody called me and said, Bob, would you help me find a house in Fort Wayne? Mm-hmm. I'd say no, but I can help find you a good realtor up there, and I'll refer you to them, and they'll take good care of you. Mm-hmm. Today, most agents aren't willing to do that. I think it's greedy on their part, but you can think whatever you want. Mm-hmm. But they consider themselves, I'm licensed for the entire state of Indiana, so I'll go anywhere and sell you a house. But that doesn't mean they know the market. They know the neighborhood. They don't even know what school district it's in. They don't know what utility companies to have you call. They just want to make the deal.
Yeah.
And it's the same purchase agreement, whether they're selling you a house in Fort Wayne or Evansville. Mm-hmm. And so they just think that, hey, I can do this anywhere. Mm-hmm. But that's truly not the case in my world. I mean, in my world, it was about representing your buyers and sellers, not yourself. And so for me, even today, if I got a buyer that wants to go to Fort Wayne or, an hour away, I'm not going to pretend I can do the work in a neighborhood or a community an hour away from here that I can do in Wabash, where I've spent my entire life. Mm-hmm. And so I would expect them to do the same, but that's not the case anymore.
Yeah. So what you're saying is that we are both networked throughout the entire state of Indiana, and if somebody's moving down to Indy, Fort Wayne, Lafayette, South Bend, Evansville, that they can contact a local realtor that they trust, and we can refer them to a realtor that we've vetted in that area and get them connected with a good agent who can help them buy their house there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so in my world, I think that's the correct way to do it. Mm-hmm. If I was a buyer, I'd want to work with an agent that knows the market, knows the area, And so, and that's the case. I've bought properties in Brown County, but when I resell them, I list them with a local realtor down there.
Yeah.
Even me, where I could put it in the MLS system down there. Mm-hmm. and be the listing agent, but I don't pretend that I know that market as well as he does.
Yeah. So, I think that's well said, right? And contact your local realtor here in your town and have them connect you with the agent with where you want to move to.
And I think one of the things one mistake that buyers make mm-hmm. is when they pull up a listing on any of those sites, Realtor.com, Zillow, you name them all, I don't care. But there's always a button there to click here for more information. Mm-hmm. And when you do that, you a lot of times think you're connecting with the listing agent, mm-hmm. but you're not. You're connecting with somebody from maybe an hour and a half away that's willing to pay for that lead. Mm-hmm. And they'll call you up and act like they know everything in the world about that property, but they don't. Yeah. And so, don't be fooled thinking you're talking to the listing agent when you do that.
Yeah, and things to consider, right? They're paying for leads on a website. They're exchanging dollars for your phone call in hopes of getting you to close that. They're not investing in relationships. And they may be investing in relationships, but when it comes to their lead generation, they're focusing on a dollar exchange. And I would like to think that here at Lundquist, we focus on relationships. I know Lundquist, our office, donates a lot to the community, and that's where I want to focus my time, because that's where I feel like we're going to get the biggest, where I feel like I'm going to get the biggest, 15 to 30 year return. I don't plan on not selling real estate in 15 years. I plan on being here for a long time, and so that's where I try and focus my energy, my time is in relationships, and not just a dollar exchange for a lead to somebody who I don't know and don't owe anything to.
And I think all agents in general want a good relationship with their clients. That's just the nature of what we do. We all want to do that.
Yeah.
So just because they're from an hour away doesn't mean they don't want to create a good relationship with that person. Mm-hmm. I'm just saying I think somebody that is more familiar with that market and that community can probably better serve you.
Yeah, for sure. I absolutely agree. So on my list here, I have Legacy Heights, Kentner Creek, Salamone Lane, and building lots that specifically I'm talking about potential areas or lots you could buy out in the county to build on. We're in a new build, and so I figured that'd be kind of our focus. With that, what are the biggest differences with building out in the county, Legacy Heights, Kentner Creek, and Salamone Lane?
Well, there's a lot of differences in all those things, but if you're going to build out in the county, you have to take into consideration that you're going to have to install a new septic system, a new well, and probably more cost in driveways and things like that. And so that's why, generally speaking, a site in the country is probably cheaper than one in town. But you buy a lot here in town, you probably got easy access and cheaper cost to hook to city water, city sewer, and the utilities, and probably going to be a little more expensive. It costs a ton of money to develop these lots anymore. This subdivision out here, for instance, the raw cost on that subdivision would have been like almost $80,000 per lot just to put this subdivision in here.
Really?
Yeah, and they're selling them for half that. So like I said, it's not a. That's one reason why you don't see developers jumping out here in these small communities and building new subdivisions. It's really hard to make it work. Kentner Creek, those owners have a lot of money in that subdivision out there, and now it's designed for more luxury homes. Those homes out there that have been built, I think there's 5 out there now, are high-end homes. And I just listed a spec home out there built by the developers, not to make money on it, just to try to get something going in that subdivision. It's priced at $649. It's 2,300 and some square feet. You can do the math. That's over $300 a square foot. And so, but it's a totally custom, really, really high-end home.
I just walked through it, and it is super nice. Really. So speaking of which, the French doors, the vaulted ceilings. I noticed on the French doors, all you do is lift the handle up and it locks it back. It's super nice, and they're 9 or 10 foot French doors.
Yeah, and
it's
got oversized windows, lots and lots of daylight coming in. It's a beautiful home.
Yeah.
Now, is it going to fall in everybody's budget? No, but if somebody's truly looking to build that caliber of house in a nice subdivision, they can't build one in there any cheaper than that.
Yeah.
And so Salamone Heights is a little different animal. It's an older subdivision. It's got 8 lots remaining in it. Easy access to schools, to hospitals, to shopping. It's a fantastic spot. And they're a little bigger lots. I think they're in the 60 range as far as price. And but that, and they've got some restrictions in there. All subdivisions in today's world will have covenants and conditions. Some will have HOAs, some will not. But they're all going to have covenants and conditions. That's just mandatory in today's world.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so there are limited restrictions in there. But you could buy a lot, hire your own builder, which you can't do here in Legacy Heights. Legacy Heights, you can't buy a vacant lot and hire your own builder. The developers have committed to selling all these lots to the developer that's building the houses behind us here, which is now Pier Construction. It's a little different style. The ones they've got under construction here are 4 one-story smaller homes. They're steel construction, so the studs and the rafters are all steel. Remains to be seen, how the interior finishes look out. I haven't really dealt with that much, so it'll be interesting to see how it turns out and what the price point is.
Yeah. I noticed there on Salamone Lane, it butts up right to the backside of Parkview's pond. That'd be a neat area to build a house, overwatch all the waterfowl coming in, which that's just my personality because I like the outdoors. But
and they've got a nice walking trail around there that you could, if you like to walk in the morning or evening.
Oh yeah,
it'd be a perfect spot.
Yeah, I think that trail goes all the way from Wabash over to Albert.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, that's a nice walking trail. But yeah, that'd be a nice area to build, and then you have Kentner Creek. They're actually really tailored towards different things.
They're completely different buyers.
Yeah, for sure.
For each one, a buyer for Legacy Heights is not the same buyer that's going to be looking to buy a lot and build in Kentner Creek.
Yeah.
So, and vice versa.
So would you say Legacy Heights is probably the most affordable option when it comes to building a new home?
At this point, yes.
Yeah, because 163. I mean, I know I have two houses right here, right now that I can think of off the top of my head that sold for more per square foot than what Connor Street's listed for.
Yeah, I mean, and those were probably out on the south side of Wabash, and
They are.
Yeah.
One's in South Point. One was my home on Lindlawn.
yeah.
So
Well, South Point, those homes, are selling, for, those smaller 3-bedroom houses that are 18, 20 years old in there. Some of them have been upgraded, some of them haven't, but they're selling in that 175 to 225 range. And I think you've got one under contract now that's over that. And now it's a newer home. That's what, 3 or 4 years old probably.
yeah, it comes with a shed. And,
Yeah.
I mean, it's,
But still,
yeah.
you're talking about $155 to $60 a square foot for that. And it's, and it's not a bad home. It's only 3 or 4 years old. But still, to go out and build that house today, they couldn't build that house today for that.
I also have a listing coming up on 27 Chrysler Avenue. If anybody's interested, okay, it's a
Yeah.
3-bedroom, 2-bath home. But that, I'm sure it'll sell quick because it's in that neighborhood, and
Yeah.
it's already established. I live there, and there's kids walk. I mean, it's nice. It's like you're in a nice neighborhood. There's
Yeah.
kids playing on the street. Everybody waves to everybody, and that's something to pay for, in my own personal opinion. Henry's going to be able to grow up and play with the kids down the street, and I won't have to be worried about through traffic. So when it comes to building lots, what are the prices you're seeing on septics and wells?
It's all over the board. It depends on what type of septic system the county will approve for that site. It could be a standard gravity septic system, or it could be something as expensive as an elevated sand mound. But they base the size of those septic systems on the number of bedrooms. So obviously, if you're building a 2-bedroom house, it's going to be much cheaper than if you're building a 4 or 5-bedroom house. And so, but you really have to go through the process to find out. And the process is you have to hire a soil scientist to come out and do soil borings and determine what types of soils are there, what kind of septic systems are conducive to that site. And then you go to the health department and they tell you what type of system you're going to have to put in there.
Yeah, so this is also a good selling point on why you want to use an agent. So if you go out and you are not aware of everything that the purchase of that lot should be contingent upon, you could go out and buy a lot that you may not be able to end up building on. And so I would strongly encourage, if you're thinking about buying a lot, reach out to one of us here at Lundquist so we can help navigate you through that process. Because if it's not contingent on a soil test and you go out and spend $40,000 on 2 acres or 3 acres to build, you may not be able to build, and it could be a really big hiccup. So moving to a lighter, less serious, less professional topic. You've been selling real estate for 43 years. What is the funniest or the wildest showing, sale you've ever dealt with, without obviously leaving names out and stuff? Because I want to hear this, because I have heard some of your stories and they're good ones.
Oh, every day I think I've seen and heard it all, but you get a surprise, every now and then you get a surprise. I don't know that I can't think of any one story that just pops out in my head, but I've had some scary situations where, especially as an appraiser. And I can think of one time when I went out to take a photo of a comparable sale that we're required to do. And the guy was standing on the front porch and he jumped in his pickup truck and chased me down, ran me off the road, basically, got out and was screaming at me. I had my window up. He was hitting my window so hard with his fist, I swore he was going to break the window out.
Yeah.
And he was literally temporarily insane. And if he'd had a gun, I think he would have killed me with it.
Yeah.
Luckily I was able to de-escalate the situation, and he went away, but that was scary, and so I've had situations like that. I mean, I've had situations where the owner forgot to tell the tenant that I was coming, and they show up and open the front door in their nightgown. It's like, now what do you do?
Yeah.
Go away, come back another day, so but we've had, I think I've probably experienced about everything you can experience in this business.
Yeah, I think we got an email about making sure to always look professional when we're doing showings, because I think maybe you had a seller that had another realtor that's not from our office show up in shorts and
Oh,
flip
yeah.
flops one time showing a house, and they're like, "Who is this guy? He didn't have any credentials. He looked like he just rolled off the beach."
Yeah.
But
Yeah, that was just a few years ago.
yeah,
And I've had that happen several times. Realtors, back in my day, realtors dressed more professional than they do today. And I get it. Everybody likes to be more casual. I'm more casual too. But I don't show up in sweats and flip flops and a t-shirt that looks like I've worn it for 4 days,
yeah,
you know? And so, yeah, that seller was not very happy. He said, "What on earth is going on here?" He said, "This guy shows up to my house. I wasn't sure he was even a realtor. You know, he had shorts, flip flops. It looked like he had just crawled out of bed. And, I actually asked him for ID. I didn't believe he was a realtor,
yeah,
you know, and he was there showing this guy's property, and he wasn't very happy about it,
oh yeah,
and I just kind of tried to downplay the situation as much as I could, but, I had to agree with him.
yeah, yeah. I tell you what. So I bring over, so in law enforcement, we always knock and announce, because you couldn't blame a property owner for holding somebody at gunpoint if they just find somebody inside their house. That's reasonable. They're inside your home. It's the most protected area there is, and so I carry the whole knock and announce when every single time I go inside of a house. It's a hard knock. It's Lundquist Real Estate and Appraisals.
I do the same thing.
Lundquist Real Estate and Appraisals. Because I don't want to get held at gunpoint, and if somebody is in there, I want them to know I'm a realtor and I'm here to show their house. We're on the same team. I'm trying to sell it.
Well, the biggest complaint I've had over the last 2 or 3 years from sellers is they call me up at 8 o'clock at night and say, "Hey, I just got home. It's dark, and my front door's standing open. Somebody that showed the property earlier in the day left this front door standing wide open. The lights all on. They were about half afraid to go in the house."
Yeah.
I have that happen so much that I have sellers now that are asking me to be present at all showings, because I'm going to be the first one in and the last one out.
Yep.
And I know I'm going to make it. The doors are locked, the lights are off, and it's frustrating, to get that call. And I get it way too often,
Yeah.
and so it's troublesome. And so like I said, especially, if it's an occupied home, a lot of times I ask them how they feel about that,
Yeah.
and, but it shouldn't happen. If people just get to talking and they're not paying attention, and they end up leaving the property and the doors are unlocked.
Yeah. Yep. And that's why it's important to work with a good agent, one that knows what they're doing, a respectful one. That's why it's important to know who you're working with. Going back to, if you want to find your realtor through Zillow, you can. However, I would strongly encourage, even if you don't use me or somebody here at Lundquist, is to work with somebody you know and trust and has a reputation, because it counts for something. You may go show the perfect ideal home, and you and your buyers may walk through it with muddy shoes, and you just may honk off that seller, and they just say, "No, we're not going to deal with these people. They're rude, disrespectful. They want to buy a house, but they don't have the common courtesy to take their shoes off on nice carpet or when they're muddy." Like, it's important to work with somebody you trust and and who has a positive reputation in their community.
Well, and I say too, if you go to a strange city and you want to find a nice place to eat, what do? First thing you do is jump on the internet and you read reviews.
Yelp.
And people should do the same thing. When they're trying to choose a realtor, get on the internet and read reviews, and then make a decision. You look at their credentials. Talk to people. In this business, I still think that referrals from other people make a big difference. And so don't be afraid to ask people for a referral.
Yeah. If you're going to move to a city outside the area, definitely reach out to your local agent, get a referral to that place where you want to move, and they're going to contact you with a good agent. At least that's what I believe, and that's what I strive to do, and that's what I know our agents at Lundquist strive to do. Moving on from here, what are some of your closing thoughts? So we've talked about new home prices. We've talked about high and demand home prices. What are your thoughts for for buyers when they're coming into the market? We've talked about sellers. What should buyers keep in mind? Because it's not just this. We don't want to go down the slippery slope of, hey, every home price is justifiable. Just pay whatever the sellers are asking. There is some negotiations there, and you got to make sure you're getting a good deal, one that you can. Let's say if you do overpay by 2 or 3, 5%, that you can recoup that back on appreciation in the next 2 to 5 years. What's your advice for home buyers? And because I would say this is a seller's market still, but I don't have near the experience you. What are your thoughts?
Well, yeah, it's still a seller's market in every way, every respect, and that's because there's so few houses available in the market today. I haven't checked for a couple of days. The last time I looked, there was like 38 active listings in the entire county, including the city of Wabash, North Manchester. So that's not very many to choose from if you're a buyer.
Not at all.
And it's been that way for the last 3+ years. So it's not anything new, but that's what's really propping up the market with the interest rates being higher like they are. And but if I had to give a buyer my advice would be, number one, choose your realtor carefully. Vet that realtor and make sure that you're choosing the realtor that you think will best fit for you guys and will be looking out for your interest. And that's normally that's a local realtor. And so that would be my first advice. And that realtor should be able to do some research. If you find a house that you really like, they should be able to do some research and give you an idea whether the price is fair, whether at what point you should start negotiating.
Yeah, and you know what? I ran into this literally this past weekend. We found a house for a buyer. It was overpriced. It is what it is. It's just my own personal opinion. I told my buyers this. I think this home is overpriced. And then while the buyer and I spoke, we were talking about when's the next opportunity to be able to buy a house like this that's in this shape. And that's why we're seeing this price per square foot at 150 to 175. 175 is insane. However, when's the next time you're going to be able to buy a house that's less than 6 years old, that doesn't need anything, that's already established, that has the shed, that there's all you have to do is move out and move their stuff in, and you're good for the next 20 years. When's the next time you're going to find that house that fits their price requirements and size requirements? And that's why house prices are the way they are. And so what we ended up doing is, me and another local realtor, it took 4 counter offers to finally settle on a price. But, I feel confident in a year or two, they'll be able to sell that house and be able to pay the agent to sell it if that's what they choose to do. And so I agree. It's just really important that you find a local qualified agent to represent you on the buyer side who cares about your interest and not just a paycheck. Same thing with the listing agents. Even more important is to finding an agent who's not going to underprice your house, but who's not going to overprice it. Because if you overprice it, you may get less than if you would have just priced it where it should have been.
It is difficult to know the exact price point in this market today. They're all over the board, and there's so few sales in any one price range. So it is difficult to help the seller price the home. But I feel like that's an essential part, is trying to help them establish a fair market price for that house. And on the other end of that, if I'm representing a buyer, I give them my opinion. Yeah, ultimately, they're going to make the decision. Yeah. And I'm good with that. But I'm going to give them my opinion based on the research I've done.
Yeah. And coming from a new agent, I think I've had my real estate license from about 2018. I've only been selling real estate since 2023. I can attest that it is difficult to price a home. And at Lundquist Real Estate and Appraisals, I get a lean on their experience with helping price. And obviously it's not appraisal, but I get to bounce ideas and bounce prices and run features by them. Hey, what do you think this new geothermal unit does to the value of this home? Or what do you think the new roof does to the value of this home? Or what do you think that this old roof does to the value of this home? I would say just probably more frequently we see homes that need electrical repair, or they need a roof, or they need new windows, or it has a structural issue. I would say that I lean on the appraisals in the appraisers in our office more for guidance, and that's one of the benefits you get. Is my argument is I believe you get a better price evaluation from Lundquist because I can lean on you guys to help me with that. So
Yeah, and part of our agents also are appraisers, and so
you
I
and
think
Christy, right?
yeah, and so that's a benefit. I think that helps me and helps our clients too.
Yeah. Well, I really think we've covered a lot of information. Do you have anything else before we close out?
Nope, not that I can think of.
All right. Well,
Just come see us.
yeah, come see us. You can contact us all by phone, social media. Just all it takes is a phone call, and I think we both pride ourselves in no pressure in trying to represent our sellers and buyers the best way possible and for their interest. So, yep, reach out to us any way you'd like. Thanks.